Recently, powerful winter storms have battered California's coast, triggering floods, landslides, and mounting risks for people and infrastructure. Recently, powerful storms led to serious floods in California. In other areas of California, like in Sierra Nevada, it entailed other disasters, such as unexpectedly huge avalanches, and over 10 people went missing. What looked like another winter storm was actually something more dangerous, a system already under strain beginning to fail. Think of a domino effect. One piece weakens, the rest follow. And it's not just the coastline that starts to crumble. The stakes are higher. We're talking about human lives. It's true that the California coastline changes fast, but there's no single factor to blame. Instead, it's an unlucky combination of forces. For decades, this paradise-like coast was treated as permanent. Developers built close to the edge. Highways hugged the cliffs and seawalls promised protection. But the coast was growing more fragile, never fully recovering from one destructive weather hit before the next arrived. Winter storms deliver the first blow. Atmospheric rivers slam into the shoreline and powerful surf strips sand from beaches. Cliffs that stood for decades suddenly fracture. Hillsides begin to creep, and when they fail, they don't just collapse. They take roads, rail lines, and multi-million-dollar homes with them. You might think, storms themselves aren't new. People should be ready for them, and that's true. Storms aren't new. What has changed is vulnerability. The water now has far more opportunity to tear the coastline apart. Another factor is king tides, the highest naturally occurring tides of the year. They act like California's preview of future sea level rises. On their own, king tides are dramatic but familiar. But when they collide with storm surge, the ocean doesn't just reach the shore, it pushes inland. Water spills into parking lots, neighborhoods, and coastal streets that were never designed to flood. And the ocean isn't the only thing moving. In parts of coastal California, the land itself is slowly sinking, a process known as subsidence. The science is simple but brutal. When the ground drops, relative sea level effectively rises faster. Now imagine this trio of forces: storms, extreme tides, and sinking land. The region is being squeezed from all sides. Decades of intensive coastal development have added weight the land was never meant to carry. Infrastructure built in the 1970s now sits inches, sometimes feet closer to the water than engineers ever planned. Homeowners fight to protect property that's steadily losing ground, while insurers quietly retreat from the riskiest zip codes. Each storm doesn't just cause damage, it speeds up the clock for everyone living there. When flooding shuts down roads and beaches, tourism stalls, workers lose hours, and local businesses take the hit. And the stakes are enormous. Coastal tourism alone makes up roughly 39% of California's $17.6 billion ocean economy. The broader coastal economy supports about $662 billion in wages and $1.7 trillion in GDP. Every collapsing bluff and flooded roadway now carries a price tag that reaches far beyond the shoreline. California's coast isn't being reshaped by one catastrophic disaster. It's being pressured from all sides. The line between land and sea was never permanent, but now it's on the move.
Something is about to reshape the entire future of the West Coast. The coastline, the infrastructure, the whole map. Scientists fear there is not one but two big earthquakes coming, one caused by another. This wasn't even on the radar for most people, but new research is changing everything. For decades, everyone treated the San Andreas Fault and the Cascadia Subduction Zone like two separate monsters that just happened to live in the same neighborhood. They were powerful, yes, but independent. But now, scientists believe these two giant faults are mechanically linked, and one can literally pull the other into rupturing shortly afterward. Cascadia moves, San Andreas moves. San Andreas tears, Cascadia tears. And the potential consequences of that are honestly haunting. scientists found evidence that it happened at least 10 times in the last 3,100 years. Earthquake, pause, earthquake. It comes from marine sediment cores, which are like time capsules pulled up from the ocean floor. Researchers analyzed layer after layer of seabed sediment and found doublets, paired debris layers created by two massive quakes happening so close together that the ocean barely had time to settle between them. That discovery takes us to the Mendocino Triple Junction, the geological troublemaker of the West Coast. It's the place where three tectonic plates crash and grind into each other like badly aligned gears. It's also the zone where the San Andreas meets Cascadia, which makes it the perfect place for these double quakes to form. The stress changes caused by a rupture in one fault travel straight through this junction and destabilize the other. It's benign when it happens to a bookshelf. When you move one book, three others shift. But when you think about it like a coastline with millions of people, entire cities, major infrastructure, it instantly feels terrifying. To many people who live on the West Coast, the San Andreas kind of feels like a California's problem, and Cascadia like an Oregon and Washington's problem. But when you understand that these two faults can essentially fire at each other, it stops being a local issue and becomes a continental one. A Cascadia megaquake alone can hit magnitude 9.0 plus, rip open 600 to 700 miles of seafloor, and send a tsunami roaring toward the Pacific coast. And it could just be the first quake, and then, maybe minutes later, the San Andreas snaps in Northern California. The shaking could ripple down the state like a zipper tearing open a jacket, and if it goes the other direction, it could be just as bad. If the San Andreas ruptures first, the intense stress redistribution can destabilize the Cascadia subduction zone. You could get the California quake first with buildings rocking, highways breaking, and power stations failing. And then, soon after, the ocean pulls back in Oregon or Washington. And the 20-minute countdown to a tsunami begins, a follow-up disaster. It's the kind of chain reaction you don't want even in a video game, let alone real life. This discovery also tells us something eerie about the earthquake in 1700, the one that sent a tsunami across the Pacific so huge that it struck Japan with no warning. Japanese fishermen called that wave the orphan tsunami because it arrived without any felt shaking. Only centuries later, scientists figured out that it came from the Pacific Northwest. But until recently, no one knew that the San Andreas might have felt that event too, and it possibly slipped or destabilized because of it. So, the whole West Coast may have moved together. And we've come to the scariest part. All this isn't about if, it's strictly about when. The faults have a rhythm, a pace, and a geological heartbeat. We've seen how they behave across thousands of years. We know what they did, and now we know they sometimes do it in sequence. The real fear isn't the first quake. California already expects a big one. The real fear is the second quake, the one that comes before you've checked on your family, before emergency responders regroup, before the power comes back, and before the dust settles. Even if you don't live on the West Coast, this matters for you too. The ports in California, Oregon, and Washington handle a massive chunk of America's imports. Knock them offline, and it's not just the coastline that feels it. The ripple hits the entire country, and potentially the world. Grocery prices spike, supply chains freeze, gas availability dips, shipping timelines go nuts. The world is much more connected than any of us thought, and a geological double punch on the Pacific coast wouldn't stay a local disaster. It would spread, thread by thread, into everyone's life. So, those in power must prepare not for one giant rupture, but for two. Emergency plans, evacuation routes, response times, and power grid designs, all of it needs updating. Because nature has now shown us what even a single major rupture can do to a modern economy. It happened in Japan in 1995, on January 17th at 5:46 in the morning. The quake hit right by the northern tip of Awaji Island, only 12 miles from Kobe, a huge, busy city with about 1.4 million people back then, and another 2.6 million in Osaka nearby. The rupture ripped along the Nojima Fault, for about 25 miles. That doesn't sound like much until you realize entire buildings can't survive that kind of sideways shove. More than 5,000 people lost their lives. 43,000 were injured. Nearly 400,000 buildings were irreparably damaged. This disaster hit one of Japan's largest industrial zones. And when you mess with a place like that, the shock doesn't stop at the shoreline. The damage was $200 billion US in losses, from smashed buildings and infrastructure and many businesses shutting down. Kobe's port just collapsed. Only 30% of the Osaka-Kobe railway lines worked. Part of National Route 28 literally vanished into the ground. Schools, hospitals, and municipal buildings, 85% of them took damage or were unusable. Fires broke out across Kobe, almost 300 separate incidents, burning the equivalent of 70 US city blocks and taking another 600 to 700 lives. Almost 100,000 people permanently left the region, 2.5% of the whole population gone in less than a year. And here's a detail that stuck with me. So many bridges failed that engineers suddenly had to confront how poorly older designs handled lateral shaking. Houses with heavy tiled roofs, built to fight typhoons, crumbled because all that weight sat too high. But the newer homes made after the 1981 building code revision stood. And that's when Japan realized that modern seismic standards were crucial to follow. Japan threw $58 billion US into restoring the region. Power came back in days. Roads and rail returned in 5 to 8 months. The main expressway took 21 months. The port was fully rebuilt in just over 2 years. And by then, all debris was cleared. Within 15 months, manufacturing jumped back to 98% of its old level. Stores reopened. By 1999, Kobe's economy reached roughly 75 to 90% of pre-quake levels. Japan overhauled its disaster management system entirely. They set up the Central Disaster Management Council and rewrote building codes. They upgraded everything from emergency drills to fire-resistant city layouts, and they launched the Earthquake Early Warning System that now gives Japan those precious few seconds before shaking hits. The same system that saved countless lives since 2007. But despite all this improvement, the Kansai region still sits on dangerous ground. The Roku-Awajishima fault system, the same one that snapped in 1995, still runs under them. The 2018 Northern Osaka quake and the 2024 Noto Peninsula quake reminded everyone that this threat didn't disappear. It just waits its turn. A future large event on that system could hit even harder simply because the region has grown more complex, more interconnected, and more economically loaded. So Kobe wasn't even a triggered double fault rupture, but it still broke a major industrial hub, reshaped a national economy, and permanently changed global shipping routes. That's why when scientists started talking about 2 joint faults firing off back-to-back in Cascadia and San Andreas, you don't even have to imagine the consequences. We already got a preview in 1995.